Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Ned. I'm seeing some familiar names. This is great.
And feel free to unmute yourselves and say hello to the group anytime. We can do some quick introductions, depending on.
We can do some talking at the beginning, and then I'm going to ask for people to participate a little bit. So it's probably good if once I start talking, everybody is muted, but then you can unmute yourselves certainly to answer any questions. And we're going to try even a breakout room. We'll see if that works. It's been wonderful seeing some of you in the morning meetings with your students, with your children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. I know some of you joined the art class earlier with the fifth graders. It was just a pleasure.
We didn't get to do that with the fifth graders.
I think it depends. It depends what grade your student, what grade level. Yeah.
Okay. It is fifth.
Right now, the fifth graders have art. We're doing rotations, so.
Gili will love that.
We can hear you.
We'll give people just a couple more minutes to log in.
In the meantime, I'll ask a question of those who are already here. Has anyone been to Israel and seen any Israeli art, either in a museum or a gallery or out? There's a lot of outdoor art, murals on walls.
Yes.
Yes.
And 45 years ago, we bought a Kalman Shemi when we went for my son's bar mitzvah. So a long time ago. Are you familiar with Kalman Shemi?
Yeah, yes. The name, but I feel like I can't connect.
Oh, he makes these carpets, kind of carpets. Tapestry. Anyway, okay. He was famous in the 70s.
Nice. I will ask Haley to take a picture and show me.
That's a great idea. Great idea.
Yeah.
Gary, do you want to just say hello and welcome us and introduce Gili quickly? And then Gili, feel free to introduce yourself and we can get started.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see you. We are so happy that you were here, not just for this event, but for all the amazing Special Friends Week events we have going on. We wish we could do this in person, but absent the ability to actually be together physically, we are grateful to have such amazing programming going on. And we're especially grateful for Gili for putting together a really terrific program today. Gili has not only been a cornerstone of the school for many years, she is one of the most passionate educators and one of the most passionate art educators I've ever come across. So we're very, very grateful for all the work that she does with our kids. And we're grateful to you, Gili, for putting this together. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Gary. And let me just say that, both Shauna Ryback and I, the lower school art teacher, and I, we're so grateful for the support that this school lends to all the arts, right? The arts activities at our school. And we really see how it benefits students. There is some amazing work going on that the students are doing, and they're so creative and open-minded, which is wonderful. So I will start this off by saying, it's interesting. In Judaism, there's this idea based on some statement in the Torah about graven images, and this idea that maybe, throughout the thousands of years, the Jewish people have not really invested as much in the visual arts. The Jewish people are known so much for being incredible musicians and, the performing arts and all kinds of other arts, but the visual arts may be a little less so, except that I would like to argue that that's not entirely true, and that there are many Jewish artists throughout history. We can see, even in the land of Israel, some mosaics that did show the images of animals and even humans. And, certainly throughout all the 2000 years of exile, there were all kinds of interpretations and, allowing people allowing themselves to go ahead and express themselves also in the visual realm. And once people started emigrating to the land of Israel in the late 1800s. Of course, there were always Jewish communities in the land of Israel producing beautiful art. But certainly when the population started to grow in that period, and then, during the British Mandate, and then once the state of Israel was finally formed, it seems like the floodgates just opened up, and the visual arts became a very important means of expression and of sort of expressing what this newfound state was standing for and what it was all about, and narrating the story of the newfound state. And so this is really a very brief survey. I am, of course, it was so hard to limit. I'm leaving out many incredible artists. But what I thought I would do is kind of start at the beginning of the state, maybe even a little bit before, showing a few artists from that period, and then sort of a middle period, and then also looking at more contemporary art from today. So really a sampler. Instead of a tour of Israeli art, this should have been called a sampler of Israeli art. So I am going to go and share my screen. Okay, it says that I am disabled from sharing.
Gili, I'm going to give you permission in 1 second. No mistake.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And I also just have to make sure I'm on the right. Okay. Here. We are all getting to be much more fluid with the technology as we go along.
And just a tip for everyone, you can also put it on speaker view so you can see Gili more clearly if you're on gallery view. So if anybody needs help, feel free to chat us or just unmute yourself and we can make that happen too.
Okay, and I should probably maybe reduce, I want to see you all, and it's also in the way a little bit. Okay, are you all seeing my slideshow? Maybe Katie, if you can just say yes. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so a tour of Israeli art. And as I said, so many beautiful pieces that it was hard to limit. I'm going to start off with an artist named Nachum Gutman. He was born. So some of these artists were born originally outside of Israel, and then, either came as children and the youth aliyah, managed to escape World War II by the skin of their teeth, and, really came to Israel, sometimes with some training from Europe and sometimes not. Although the Israeli art school Betzalel was very much influenced by, the European art that was happening pretty much in that same era. Gutman came as a very young child and ended up living the rest of his life in Israel, and he really connected with the Israeli story, with coming from Europe, where life was so hard for Jews, where Jews was very limited what Jews could do in Europe in terms of profession, coming to Israel, where there was an ideology of Jews can be anything. There's that famous line that there's even going to be Jewish thieves, it's the Jewish homeland, and even we'll have people who are professors and we'll have people who are burglars, but they're all going to be Jews and they'll be free to do what they want to do. He really romanticized, as did many, the agricultural life in Israel. And again, that was a new thing for the people that had just come away from pogroms and difficult times in Europe. Jews couldn't be farmers easily, but here in the state of Israel, with kibbutzim and moshavim and that kind of ideology of working the land and working hard and building up the land, Jews could do that. And also that connection with the land. Here it is, the holy land, the biblical land. We farmed back then 2,000 years ago, and we could farm again. And so many of his paintings are talking about agricultural life and, the holidays. And of course, as you know, the holidays are very agrarian, very agricultural. So one of his famous paintings is about Shavuot. I thought I would show that because Shavuot is soon happening for us as well at school, and we celebrate it here at Bernard Zell. And, he had sort of a European influence, but then he definitely connected to the land and imagery that is connected to the state of Israel or to the land of Israel. Bringing the first fruits to the temple, that kind of thing. Another earlier painter was this guy. It's funny because in Hebrew it's Reuven. He has the same name twice. Rubin. Also born outside of Israel, born in Romania, emigrated, as a pretty young person to the state of Israel. He kind of went back and forth. He went to study in Europe, but then came back. But he, just like Nachum Gutman, really connected to the land. The joy of the sunshine and the flowers. And if you think about it, coming also from Europe, these things it was a little more tropical, a little more almost exotic feeling, to people that had come from Europe. And what I thought we would do is I would show you the kind of conversations that in art class we sometimes have with our students. There's a method of analysis that is just very powerful for our students to work with. And most recently, I was working with 8th graders looking at photography because they're doing a big project where they are photographing Holocaust survivors and then doing a response photograph of themselves, a response to the story that they heard. But before we even started doing the hands-on part, I had the students analyze photographs done by famous photographers like Robert Capa, who did wartime photography in World War II, Dorothea Lange, who is the one who popularized what was happening to the Dust Bowl migrant workers. And so the students used the same method of see, think, wonder to analyze photographs and get a deeper meaning or a deeper understanding of what the photographer was trying to convey. In this case, I would like to run all of us through this process. So we have this painting by Reuven. And what we do with the students is we start by saying, what do you see? Without any kind of interpretation, the first question is, what do you see? And I am going to try to see some of you so I can see what people are saying. So feel free to unmute yourselves. And just offer, we can, do this in a casual way. What do you see in this painting without any analysis? Who is brave enough to talk?
Landscape.
Nice. Thank you for being the first one. So yeah, it is a landscape. Does anyone want to try to recognize or guess where this is? Like where in the land of Israel do we see what looks like kind of like a lake and then it's surrounded by mountains?
Dead Sea.
Trees.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
You can speak, she can hear you.
Well, I see cedar trees up on the top of the hill.
Yeah, that's right.
Me too.
Very nice. That might actually be a bit of a giveaway if we say cedar trees. So the cedars of Lebanon are, further to the north. So this is the Sea of Galilee. But we're still saying, what do we just see? So we see the trees, it's a landscape. Anyone else want to offer up a few more?
The desert?
Yeah, it looks, very much certainly at the top part, it's kind of desert-like. Although, as you can see, it's not all desert-like, right? There looks like there's some farming going on. Anybody else?
A lot of color.
Yeah, the color, gorgeous color, deep like gem tones, right? Very deep colors.
There's
Right.
like a synagogue or some kind of a religious building.
Right. So are you thinking of the building that's
Yes.
more on the left, right? Like it looks like
Yeah.
something maybe ancient. It could be a religious building.
Yeah, there's one lone animal.
Right.
Yeah. Are you talking about this one here?
Yeah.
Do you see my cursor? Yeah. So looks like maybe a donkey sort of in the wheat field or something like that.
Living on a kibbutz.
Right. We do see some farming areas, so it could be living on a kibbutz.
Is that tower,
These two are if they're
is that like
animals, 'cause you
like
put it further.
electricity?
I'm
Like right here in the
Oh,
front?
yes. So look at that, signs of a bit of modernity, right? So we see
Right,
some
kind of doesn't
electricity.
fit in with the rest of it.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I don't know if you folks see, this looks like maybe two more donkeys, and like
Yeah.
or maybe a shepherd kind of person, and then there's a horse and a carriage. So again, we're not analyzing, although it's so hard not to, right? We already started to say, oh, we noticed the electricity. Oh, we noticed a few things. And that's really the next step. The next step is, what do you think? Like, how would you analyze? And we started to do that. Like, maybe these are kibbutzim, maybe there's, fields, but maybe it's connected to the kind of farming that was going on. And the electricity. Any more analysis? Like, what do you think he's showing us?
I'm thinking that putting something modern like electricity with something that looks so ancient, that it's sort of an expanse of time.
Yes.
It doesn't exist in one moment of time. but-
Myrna, that's very profound. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so true. I think, again, Reuven was fascinated with, this was the fledgling state of Israel. Things were starting to develop. Even the idea that there was this kind of farming, on the hills, and electricity was being brought here. There's this ancient, it's actually the lava stone in the area of the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee. There's this sort of basalt stone that a lot of the buildings are built with from antiquity. And yet we have the electricity. We have sort of a nomadic existence, this shepherd, with leading these donkeys, but yet maybe there's something a little more European looking. I mean, it's funny that there's more to it than originally meets the eye, is what I'm trying to show you. And then, of course, there's the next question, what do we wonder? Like, what questions do you have? Would anyone share about that?
What did he leave out?
Yeah, good point. What is he not showing? Maybe there's a landfill somewhere that he's not showing. I mean, what did he decide not to show? Just like with anything, right? The artist makes a choice about what they're showing, or maybe what they're kind of combining, even if it might not really be there in real life. Like, maybe these things are more spread out. Anything else?
I think they're showing the success of this little kibbutz or area. I mean, you have a sailboat, and you have healthy crops. It looks like fertile land. You have trees growing. I don't know what that white thing in the back behind the donkey, the lone donkey, is. I don't know if that's a.
Yeah, I don't know. You're right. That's hard to see. I think it's another like building. Like, it looks almost like a few windows, like a low kind of.
I think
Of a
they're
building.
showing
Yeah.
the health and of the land and the success of this area.
Yes, and certainly knowing what we know about this artist, helps us to sort of interpret it that way, and that's very true. Like, he was really focused on that. He wasn't so much talking yet about, there's all kinds of issues, right? But he was really kind of romanticizing. And what some of my students said, I did show this image to students a few years back. They were very much focused on the what looked like maybe a Bedouin or a Druze villager or an Arab villager, like, in a way, coexistence, but maybe kind of romanticizing the exotic, like different from Europe, right? We didn't see people leading, shepherds leading animals around. And yet there's the kibbutz, the organized farming kibbutz. Okay, so you guys are good at this. We're gonna move on. I think I have to again minimize because it keeps in the way. Okay, so another artist also coming from Europe, from Galicia, immigrating to Palestine. Mordecai Ardon is very special. He also connected to, the land, to the excitement of starting this new country. He really connected to how we are, coming back to a land that was our birthright, that was our biblical land. As you can see in the mystery landscape, the one that's more in the shades of brown, he is evoking the ancient Hebrew letters. He's evoking, as you can imagine, if anyone wants to call out, what would the ladder maybe connect to, a biblical story? different ladders trying to go heavenward. And he also created his own like inventory of symbols. As you can see, the painting on the right, it's kind of like the stones that the Kohanim would wear, and yet he's doing it like it's in the sky. And he really just combined these symbols with ideas about what life in Israel was like, about mystery. He connected with the Kabbalah, and he was really very unique in that respect, and very famous at the time, of those years. He also, coming from Europe, couldn't leave the idea of what happened to Jews during the Holocaust behind. Many Israeli artists tried to always look forward, but Mordecai Ardon was also very much looking to the past, or the recent past, and connecting again with the biblical stories. So even though he's showing Sarah, the matriarch's response to the sacrifice of Isaac, or her fear that Isaac would be sacrificed, but he's using it as a symbol for the sacrifice of the Jewish people during the Holocaust. And whereas Isaac was saved, the Jewish people were not. And so he was very affected. He lost many family members and came to Israel very much on his own. I'm going now to sort of the middle stage of the state of Israel with a photographer, David Rubinger. I am sure many of you have seen this famous image. This was taken, Rubinger was just lucky to be with the troops when they entered the old city, when they captured it from Jordan during the Six-Day War. And he was the first photographer to be able to take pictures of what it looked like for the Israeli soldiers to come to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. And so it became an iconic image. There's an interesting story that he sent it, I think, to one of the news agencies, and immediately it was like picked up and reproduced many times, but like he lost the rights to the picture. I don't understand how that happened, poor guy. But at least it really jump-started his career. And he served with the British Army and the Jewish Brigade. He took photos in North Africa, Europe during the war, came back to Israel, and again during the Six-Day War was able to capture this amazing image. And what's really adorable is that he's the one who organized a reunion of those. At least he was able to get those three soldiers to come together a few years ago. Rubinger recently passed away, but to have a reunion of the soldiers that were in that picture, and it really is an incredible image. Some people say it idealizes war. There's a lot of critique, although I have to say Rubinger took many photos, and this just happened to be one that just looked so, powerful, idealizing, but at the same time, he definitely took pictures of war that showed us how awful war could be. And then trying to switch to the next picture, and it's not. He was the type who captured those funny, unexpected moments. He was just there throughout Israel's early history, documenting everything, but in a very artistic way, which is why we call him an artist as well. Mark Chagall and Golda Meir. This is pretty cool. I didn't realize that Eleanor Roosevelt was in Israel when they were announcing the UN vote. So that's a really iconic image.
Pretty cool.
Again, during the Six-Day War, Rubinger, following the troops wherever they went, even into the shower. But like the joy of being able to wash off after being in the dust and in the war zone. And then I do find his images to be very reminiscent of Robert Capa, who is, a famous Jewish photographer from Hungary who documented World War II. I believe Rubinger knew him. Jumping now more to somebody a lot more contemporary, Sigalit Landau is a performance artist. So here is our first artist that was actually born in Israel, born in Jerusalem, and again, really connected to the land, focusing on the Dead Sea. As Landau says herself, she thinks of herself as a bridge maker, looking for new and vital ways to connect the past with the future, the West to the East, the private with the collective, the mundane with epic narratives. And I'm excited to show you a movie. I think I have to stop sharing. Hold on a second. So there's a really wonderful movie of her explaining. Oops, I'm in the
This
wrong.
is excellent, Dad. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah.
I hope so. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again.
Thanks.
Hmm?
Okay.
Yeah, I just was trying to get to the movie and then share the screen. Because she can describe it much better than I can. Can you see where it says Sigalit Landau saltiers?
Yes.
Okay. Just looking at the time, I'm hoping we can get through. Okay.
We invested over 2 years in writing and thinking about the Dead Sea and also explaining the phenomena of the disappearance and sinkholes and damage that has been done. I went down memory lane, how I, as a kid, was living in Jerusalem. Our sea was the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is a tantalizing lake. It's beautiful blue turquoise water, but today the lake is so much smaller. When I was a child, we used to go and spend time on the shores of the Dead Sea, and there was the feeling that there was much more chance for peace. Jewish people were visiting there, Christians and Muslims, Arabs from Jericho. It's all embedded into what I'm doing today. You know, my family memories and my family story. It's really not a surprise that year after year for the past 15, 16 years, I keep reinventing myself there. It really could be like a variety of projects. Would be a photography underwater, and I'll do sculptures, installations. My first monumental piece that brought me back as an adult was film Dead Sea. The spiral was taken from the top in the days where there was no drones. Way back in 2005, I built this raft, and I wanted it to be built from sweet watermelons, which grows nearby. So this is the first reason. This is the first.
I don't show
piece,
this to
and
the
was
kids.
For a show called The Endless Solution, and apparently, from that moment on, there was no way back. Year after, I needed to check, test. Then I learned about crystallization. Then I moved to another site on a different shore, and then I started asking questions. Making, you know, from fishing nets from Jaffa to chandeliers from barbed wire. After I published the book, I wanted to put saltiers behind. And then came Corona, and then at the time of Corona, I was very somehow busy at work, putting up a site-specific show installation. Now it's summer again, and we came back. It's if I don't really control it.
So I want to make sure that I can show you the last artists that we're going to look at. So basically her connection is very much with a certain part of the state of Israel, with the Dead Sea, with the crystallization, like the salt and what she can do with the salt. And she talks a lot, as I said, of being a bridge between East and West, and, you know, wanting to maybe have something to do with the Jordanians on the other side of the Dead Sea. But I think we have just enough time for me to show you the last artist. Oops, I have to get out of that. Can we share my screen again? I don't know if any of you can stay maybe 3 or 4 more minutes. If you can, that would be fantastic. So Sigalit Landau, still working today, continuing to create these amazing things. A European wedding dress from her great grandmother that she crystallized in the Dead Sea. I think that was in the movie The Shoe, and her incredible video. The whole idea of watermelons, again, was very much, you know, a local, looking at what's grown in Israel, grown on the kibbutzim. She has a whole explanation of why it was watermelons. Morin is also an environmental artist. We're not going to go through the See, Think, Wonder process, but I wanted you to know he is looking more at you know, the difficult aspects of living in Israel. We wish it could be otherwise, but as you all know, there have been terrorist events, there have been wars, and after a particular terrorist event that happened at the Hebrew University cafeteria in 2002, 19 Hebrew University students were killed, including a few study abroad students, which was very upsetting. I actually have a friend who was engaged to a woman. He's actually Northwestern's Hillel director now. He was engaged to a woman who was killed in that terrorist attack. And you know, he actually did a storytelling event where he talked about it, but I'm happy to tell you that he is happily married and has children today. But this sculpture is so evocative. Basically, it's called the Tilting Tree. And I thought maybe we could end our time in a discussion about that. Like, what is Morin trying to show us by having created a monument like that, where there's a tree, it's right next to where the event happened, it's tilted. He does something to keep it growing, exactly diagonal. And I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me just see if I have one more picture of it. No, that's a different one. Okay, but yes, I would love to hear your thoughts on this monument, this piece of art.
I think he wants to show that no matter what you do in Israel, they do not give up, and the tree can still live no matter what you do to it, and that's their spirit.
Linda, that's so powerful. Wow.
And life goes, like that life goes on.
Yes, life goes on.
Life goes on.
Anybody else? I love hearing what you all have to say.
Well, I think it also means that we never forget.
Hmm.
And this is the reminder.
Yeah, life goes on, right? But look at how life was changed, right? It was like turned, on its side.
Right.
And yet there are still roots. The tree is continuing to grow.
Mhm.
Shows that we don't break, we bend.
Wow.
I see it that we have hope despite the fact that the world is out of kilter.
Going to show you another one that's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, that was in the permission for this. Isn't that cool?
Yes.
I've seen this one. It's hanging in the alleyways of Jaffa, and it's the floating orb. And there's a lot of symbolism here, like this tree that is suspended, it's growing. Anyone want to share their thoughts?
I think it just shows how they think out of the box, and the Israelis have had to deal with things that nobody ever has before. Always trying to put the envelope and make lemons out of lemonade. I mean, they have that spirit. They're going to keep going and getting better and trying new things. They're just.
About the lemon tree.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about also the wandering Jew, right? Like, that the roots are sort of suspended in the air. They're not rooted in any single place. They can sort of be transported. I know Morin has talked about that. I'm going to see what I wrote. Rooting is a common theme in this part of the world. The Jewish Torah is being compared to a tree of life, and people who live in these parts are constantly struggling over land rights and legitimizing. So yeah, he had his own sort of ideas, but I think what's lovely about art is it's always, as always open to interpretation. And so people do analyze it, of course, differently. Do you folks, I know we're supposed to officially be over. I have a little more time, and I have one more artist I want to show. So I don't think anyone who feels they have.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. So let me get to the next one. So the next one was kind of looking at just Israeli street art and how street art is a place where, artists can express all kinds of perspectives. You see from all kinds of backgrounds, saying all kinds of things. And there's a particular artist named, again, it's not moving. Rami Meiri. Another artist, of course, younger, and so born in the state of Israel. And the way he deals with stress of living in Israel is by bringing humor. So you can walk all over the streets of Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, different cities in Israel, and you will suddenly come upon a surprise, a Rami Meiri mural, where
Here, a surprise.
the people look very real. It's like hyper realism. So there's one near the beach where it looks like these peeping Toms. The boys are looking in the windows. And then you can see the photograph was taken with some real people looking in the windows. But it's kind of exciting how similar, they look to the real people. Also, somebody just peeking out from a corner. He's got, this person is like bursting out from some entryway. Kind of making use of the foliage that's already there and adding a face. He even said, I like to bring funny figures to balance life under pressure. And I love how he says it, it's my job to give people a feel of normal life, even though life hasn't returned to normal, certainly after a war. During the Gulf War, he was commissioned to create a mural in a Tel Aviv suburb that was hit by Scud missiles. During a multiple suicide bombing campaign a few years back, he was asked to boost morale by applying his signature touch to an office complex. He says, this isn't a normal country, but if I give people the feeling that there's life going on, then maybe they'll feel okay about living here. And I want to know, all of you, that really the art, the public art that goes on in Israel really does help people to feel good about living there. And my final note is just this. Somebody posted this on the internet, came across it in Israel, that somebody had written love in Hebrew and in Arabic and drew a heart. And I guess, that's my hope, that we help bring peace to Israel. So that's it for the very of Israel. I would be more than happy to do this kind of thing again. Just let the folks in charge know, because it's just a joy for me to talk with you and to share my love of Israeli art with you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Gili,
you.
thank you so much for sharing this with us. It really, I'm Rachel Charlotte, for those who don't know me. I'm the Assistant Director of Development here, and I don't always get a chance to sit in the classroom. So for me, this was also an incredible opportunity to learn from Gili, who's an incredible educator. And somebody said something about to the tilted tree that, we bend, but we don't break. And that really stuck with me. So I'm gonna embrace that and remind myself of that every day as we continue to, navigate this crazy world in which we are finding ourselves these days. So thank you for participating through this whole Special Friends Week, which is lots of offerings. And for those of you who have lower school students, don't forget that's tomorrow, Wednesday. And for your early childhood students, that's Thursday. And we have another Lunch and Learn tomorrow at noon with Dr. Jeff Ellison. So please feel free to join us then. Gili, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. And I didn't realize you were going to tell the schedule, and I'm so glad you did. I really also am tapping into those words about bending and not breaking. And, just during the pandemic, this school, Bernard Zell, we bent, we did not break. And the fact that we have school in person, it's so meaningful to the students, even though we have to wear masks and, we're distanced, we're situated apart, but the students are just so happy to be here in person. And it's going beautifully, really well. And thanks to people like Rachel.
Yeah, it's just wonderful.
Gili, can we ask you for your email address?
Certainly, yes. I will type it in the chat. Are you able to see the chat? I'm also on the faculty, website, but I'm putting it in. It's gsherman@bernardzell.org. Yeah, there it is. Oh, thank you.
I'm curious about the children's reactions. when they see these, how do they interact?
So I guess I'm trying to think, a few years ago, I did do something looking at some of those early paintings and trying that See, Think, Wonder. But I've done the street art with the students. We actually, during Yom Ha'atzmaut, I showed a bunch of examples of street art throughout Israel. And then the students worked on a piece that they would add to a piece wall. Like, so they did a kind of a street art, like we use this idea of silhouettes and having an accent color. So they did a lot of things like, hands coming together, like for peace, and having a heart or a peace sign in the middle. Like, we talked more about symbols and creating really simple images because they just had like 40 minutes to do it. And then the idea was to like combine what all the students did onto one wall. We're actually still in the process of putting the wall up, but that was a Yom Ha'atzmaut activity. So, but that was a situation where I did show some examples. We talked a little bit about some of the examples, but then it was a hands-on project. So like I said, with the 8th graders, I did do the See, Think, Wonder, looking at photography, because we're doing this Holocaust project. In fact, I think Dr. Ellison will be talking about that tomorrow, that project. Well, he's looking at Elie Wiesel, I think, but he's spearheading this Holocaust project where we have photographs of the survivors and then student photographs. But the whole method of See, Think, Wonder, I've used numerous times with students. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, how the children reacted. Do they react like we react?
Yeah, so
we learn from them.
Yeah. What's really neat is, like, you have all said some really like moving things about, about Israel, about bending and, all of that. And what amazes me, what never ceases to amaze me, is how often the students say things in this sophisticated way. Like, I'm like, wow, they're only in 5th grade or in 6th grade, and they have very deep thoughts, and they've often shared. I mean, I really felt it again with the photography. I mean, those were 8th graders, but their response, like there was one picture that I showed, which was again a Robert Capa, and it was a soldier from World War II, like looking like just totally like relieved, like the war was over, and just their thoughts about this, the expression on his face, like, homesickness, but relief. And then I told them that was a German POW soldier. And then it was like, oh, how did that change their response? And they were like, yeah, but you know what? He has a family, and he was still, even though he might have committed some atrocity. I mean, it really led to a really deep discussion. I mean, that was kind of a surprise. Or even the Dorothea Lange, where the impoverished people during the Dust Bowl, and the look on the mother's face, and the 2 children. And, our students have so much depth of thinking. I'm always amazed.
Thank you. I am too.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Linda, it's so much. Oh, she's gone. It was nice to see her.
Yeah, feel free to say hi to each other.
She's gone.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so
I'm
much.
reading your comments in the chat. Thank you so much. This is a treat. Yeah, Charlie. So